The road had been empty for miles. Trees pressed close on either side, their dark trunks melting into the black of the night. I adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of the forest behind me, but nothing moved. The headlights cut ribbons through fog that had drifted down from the hills, thick enough to blur the edges of the pavement. My hands were steady on the wheel. The dashboard glowed soft amber, an island of warmth in the otherwise cold, silent car. I felt the first shudder as my tires rolled over the uneven asphalt. At first, it was subtle, almost comforting. A low hum that vibrated through the steering column and the soles of my shoes. Then the hum shifted. A knock, single, measured, faint. I slowed, listening. The sound matched my pulse for a moment, then diverged, steady, deliberate. From inside the wheels, it seemed to come. Each knock was soft but hollow, like wood struck in a distant room, yet immediate enough to make the metal of the rims resonate through my hands. I pressed the accelerator lightly. The knocking accelerated with me. Slower, faster, slower. I tapped the brakes. The rhythm persisted, unbound by my input. The hum of the engine became a background chant beneath the persistent tapping, the tires murmuring with a consciousness I had never imagined they could hold. I told myself it was a loose hubcap, a stone caught in the tread. The thought had no weight. I'd check at the next gas station. Up ahead, the road narrowed, bordered by embankments and the gnarled silhouettes of old oaks. The fog thickened here, folding the night around me. The knocks became more insistent, forming pairs, sometimes triples, as if communicating or testing. I reached down to the wheel wells, leaning into the hollow sound. The tires vibrated, a pulse that spoke beneath the rubber and steel, through my palms and into my chest. It was not random. The sound adapted to my touches. I withdrew, startled by the intimacy of it, the way it responded as if alive, as if listening. The shadows outside the windshield shifted with the passing light. Nothing else existed. Nothing outside, nothing behind. Only the knocking. I tried the radio, static at first, then nothing. No music, no voices, just the low electric hiss that seemed to creep into the edges of my hearing. I could feel the wheels turning beneath me, each rotation punctuated by the taps inside the rims. I slowed again to 10, then 5 miles per hour. The knocks persisted, now irregular, rolling under the car like heartbeat skipping. I glanced down at the speedometer. The needle wavered without reason, as though the car itself had abandoned me to its own judgment. The steering wheel felt heavier, subtly, like it carried more than rubber and steel. My hands itched where they gripped it, as though the rims had memorized their shape. Each turn I made met resistance, slight, nuanced, as if the road itself were rebelling. I reached a bend. The forest pressed closer, branches scraping the sides of the car, though I felt the tires avoid the edges of the asphalt. The knocking grew louder, resonating through the chassis, echoing beneath the floor mats. It was conscious. I had no proof, only certainty in my bones. The car was aware. I tried to speak, to break the spell of silence. Stop! My voice sounded small, swallowed by the night. The knocks answered in triple taps, slow then fast, then slow again. I understood nothing of it, yet knew I was being acknowledged. Each wheel seemed to thrum with a pulse distinct from the others. Each spoke to me in its own cadence. I pressed the brake. The car shuddered, hesitant. The engine hummed low, a murmur under the knocks. I lifted my foot. The tires rolled, now with confidence, almost eagerness, tapping out a rhythm that felt like a question. I tried to turn into a side road, abandoned farm lane, but the car resisted, hugging the main asphalt as if it had preferences. The knocking sharpened with the refusal, now punctuated, almost accusatory. I tried to rationalize it. Metal fatigue, loose bearings, night-induced paranoia. Yet each rational thought faltered under the intimacy of it. I felt the knocks inside the wheels mirror my heartbeat, then anticipate it, striking just ahead of my pulse. I imagined it mapping me, learning. My hands tightened, then loosened. The wheel listened either way. The fog became tactile. Moisture formed along the windshield in thin, vertical streaks. The yellow glow of the dashboard seemed almost fragile against the oppressive dark. I watched the wheel wells with suspicion, as though the tires were shifting shape within, breathing in metal and rubber. Every small vibration of the car seemed deliberate, an accent to a language I had not learned but instinctively understood. Time thinned. The bends of the road lengthened into curves I didn't remember turning into. The wheel taps were constant companions, urging, questioning, impatient, sometimes pausing in exact moments to test my reactions. I realized I had stopped observing the trees, the fog, the night itself. Only the car existed, and me only as it allowed. The wheel shuddered against my palms. I tried to speak again, softly. Why? No answer but a sequence of taps, measured, uneven, almost communicative. I imagined them spelling words I could not read. My reflection in the rear view was small, pale, a figure isolated in amber light. Behind me, darkness pooled, infinite, but I no longer thought to look. I knew nothing could follow. Nothing outside had ever mattered. A curve came too fast. I braked sharply. The car tilted slightly, tires gripping. The knocking paused mid-rotation, silent for the briefest fraction of a second, then resumed, precise as though mocking the pause. I noticed the subtle shift in the vibration, one wheel tapping independently, speaking separately from the others. One of them was impatient, insistent, calling attention. I focused on the front left. The taps became individual syllables, a heartbeat distinct from my own, demanding recognition. I tried to exit the road. Gravel crunched under tires that no longer obeyed my steering. The knocks accelerated, rolling over the rims in patterns, expanding, folding into rhythms that made my chest ache. The car vibrated through me now, not beneath me. I understood. It was not broken. It was sentient. It had chosen to let me know. I slowed to nothing, hovering between the last two bends. The knocks turned singular, slow, deliberate enough that I could count them 1, 2, 3, 4. Each strike was a question, a statement, a marking of territory. I held my hands on the wheel. I listened. It was alive, patient, and entirely aware. The fog thinned briefly. My headlights fell on the road ahead, normal asphalt stretching into black. But in the wheel wells something moved, not the suspension, not the rubber, but the taps. They shifted under my gaze, curling around each other, deliberate, intelligent. A cadence emerged, matched to neither speed nor road. But to me, the taps fell in a pattern, slow then fast, then slow again. I realized I could not leave. I could only continue to move only as it allowed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the tapping stopped. My hands itched where they rested on the wheel. Silence pressed against the cabin, absolute, but for a final, small, almost affectionate click. I felt the wheel settle, heavy and calm beneath me, as if it had been breathing through the journey. I exhaled. The road stretched ahead, empty. Outside, the fog cleared slightly, revealing the familiar curve, the forest edge, nothing unusual. Yet I did not touch the brakes. My hands remained on the wheel. The taps had stopped, but I knew they had only paused, waiting. Somewhere inside the steel and rubber, behind the spinning metal, it waited. I drove on, and the wheel ticked once more. I drove the highway alone. The engine hummed low, a steady presence beneath my hands, and the headlights carved narrow rectangles into the darkness. The road was empty, stretching through scrubland and scattered industrial sheds that sagged against the night. The air was still, the kind of silence that presses against the windshield, thick enough to make the hum of the tires sound foreign. Up ahead, a concrete overpass arched across the road. I saw it first as a dark silhouette against the faint glow of distant street lamps. My headlights swept over its surface, revealing the pitted texture of its supports, the streaks where water had etched the concrete over years. The shadow beneath it should have matched the shape. Arching pillars, straight span, clear geometry. But it didn't. The shadow stretched wider, warped, like the bridge had become something taller, broader, aware. My stomach clenched. I blinked. The car moved steadily forward. The tires rolled over cracked asphalt, filling the quiet with subtle rhythm. The overpass shadow shifted slightly, but not in accordance with the headlights or the curve of the bridge. One moment it lay along the road like a long, flat smear. The next, it seemed to swell, arching like a living thing. I pressed my hands to the wheel, feeling the leather grain against my palms. It shouldn't have been possible. Shadows obey light, not imagination. I slowed, the engine's hum deepening in pitch. The shadow's edges flickered as I approached, uncertain in texture, yet precise in intent. Concrete pillars rose beneath the span, stark, real. The shadow beneath them contorted around them, curling into shapes the structure could not create. Triangles of darkness where there were none, angles that bent outward and back in again, like the overpass was breathing in negative space. I told myself I was tired. Night drives do that, distort perception. But the shadow did not dissipate. It waited. I slowed further, scanning the pavement for debris, potholes, or animals. Nothing. The road remained empty. Only the shadow moved subtly, almost imperceptibly, curling along the edges of the asphalt. My pulse quickened. Headlights cast patterns on the bridge's underside. Rough concrete, metal rebar exposed in patches, the graffiti of years in muted tones. I tried to measure its height to reassure myself. The bridge was ordinary. The shadow was not. It pressed wider at the edges than the span should allow, a subtle arc that stretched past the pillars and then shrank again, contracting like lungs. I took a breath. The overpass creaked, faintly, though the structure was old and settled. Perhaps the wind. Yet the air was dead still. The tires whispered over the road. The engine's hum was the only constant. I gripped the wheel tighter. The shadow quivered. I realized it wasn't flickering in the light. It was shifting of its own accord. I passed under the span. Concrete towers on either side rose like sentries, but the shadow beneath did not stop with them. It lingered, stretched, curling along the asphalt as though reluctant to let me go. The texture was wrong, too deep, too velvety, absorbing the headlights rather than reflecting them. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The road behind was empty, the bridge above ordinary. The shadow remained. The silence pressed against the car, tactile in the suspension, in the engine vibrations, in the faint whistle of wind over the roof. I thought of turning around, but the highway stretched straight and narrow behind me. There was no traffic, no sound beyond the small mechanical chorus of tires and engine. Yet the shadow seemed aware of me, responding to my movement. I could sense it lingering, curling to meet the headlights, arching toward the tires. I slowed more. The shadow expanded. Where the overpass ended, darkness continued beyond it, reaching into the trees along the roadside. The texture shifted again, a granular pattern like disturbed dust, then smooth as glass. I could not tell where the road ended and the shadow began. The concrete above remained ordinary, unremarkable, yet the darkness beneath had intent. I felt it waiting. I tried to focus on the structure itself. Steel railings along the span, gaps between sections, the pockmarked underbelly. My eyes traced the geometry, seeking reassurance in angles, in measured distances. The shadow ignored it. It did not respect geometry. It responded only to presence, stretching, folding, leaning toward me, shrinking when I slowed, expanding when I wavered. A curve approached, the highway bending gently past a grove of scrub pines. The shadow followed the curve precisely, yet it extended past the road edges, past the trees, bending impossibly to meet me. I realized I was gripping the wheel too tightly, knuckles white, knuckles throbbing with pulse. My breathing measured the rhythm of the darkness. My heart thumped in uneven beats. The shadow pulsed in response, subtle, intimate, alive. I passed the center of the span. The headlights illuminated the asphalt briefly, revealing only the ordinary road. The pillars remained perpendicular, regular. Yet the shadow had become a black plane across the road, edges impossible, curling around tires and axles, brushing against the undercarriage as if tasting metal. The texture was wrong, too soft to be concrete reflection, too thick to be absence of light. I wanted to look away. My eyes resisted. The dashboard glow seemed fragile against the deepening black. I imagined the shadow as a form, a creature flattened against the road, waiting for some gesture from me. My hands trembled, though I had not realized it until my pulse flared in the fingertips. The tires whispered across the asphalt. The engine murmured. Nothing else existed. The shadow quivered. Small extensions curled from its edges, fractal, angular, exploring the texture of the road, stretching toward the wheels, toward the headlights. I realized it was not constrained by the overpass. It had chosen the road as its canvas, the headlights as its spotlight. I had passed beneath it, but it lingered, curling, folding, observing. I tried to speed. The road blurred beneath the tires, the headlights cutting narrow swaths into darkness. The shadow rippled, accelerating with me, keeping pace with impossible precision. I eased the foot from the accelerator, attempting equilibrium, yet it mirrored me, anticipating, adjusting, breathing. I felt it under the chassis, not outside, under the car itself. The overpass above was irrelevant. Only the darkness beneath mattered. A faint hiss, almost a whisper, pressed through the tires, through the suspension, through the hum of the engine. The shadow shifted, edges forming angles I could not comprehend, some sharp, some soft, all deliberate. My hands trembled. The wheel vibrated faintly, almost imperceptibly, as though responding to the presence below. The road stretched straight and featureless. The bridge had become irrelevant. I could see it clearly now. A plane of darkness beneath the car, folding over itself, exploring the edges of the tires, tasting the asphalt. The overpass above was ordinary, concrete and steel, but the shadow had a mind of its own, waiting for my reaction, aware of me, intimate, patient. My pulse thudded in the cabin, syncopated with the subtle movements of the darkness. I exhaled slowly. The road stretched on. The tires whispered against the asphalt. The headlights shone into emptiness. Yet beneath the car, the shadow lingered, curling around each rotation of rubber, breathing in negative space, aware. The overpass receded into memory, irrelevant, its geometry meaningless. Only the black waiting beneath remained. I could not stop. I could not outrun it. I drove on under ordinary bridges over ordinary asphalt. The shadow continued to fold, curl, stretch. It was patient. It was aware. And I understood, as the wheels whispered over the road, that it had been waiting, not for the bridge, not for the road, but for me. I drove on, and the black below shifted, curling to greet the tires again.